Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the FTD webinar titled, How to Create a Service Culture That Sells. We are excited to welcome back today's featured presenter, Bob Negen, co-founder of WhizBang Retail Training. Please note, this is part 2 of a 2-part webinar series. We have 2 quick housekeeping notes. Bob will be taking questions at the end, so simply type your question in that question box on the upper right side of your screen, and feel free to submit your questions throughout, and we will take care of those at the end. Also, look in that handout section. Bob has an Gold Star action plan for you, a game plan that you can download and use afterwards to get you started. So that is available right now that you can download. It'll also be available through ftdi.com as well. It'll be loaded with the recording afterwards. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Bob.
Well, thank you, Janet. Thank you, FTD, for having me. And most importantly, thank you to everybody who is watching this. If you're watching this live, great. I'm honored that you're giving me the time. We are taking questions. So if you have questions, please put them in. I'm happy to answer them. If you're watching this as a recording, again, I'm honored that you're spending the time. This is a really near and dear topic to me because selling is why you exist. What is the primary function of your business? Yes, you want to spread joy. Yes, you want to sell emotions and all of those things. But really what you want to do is you want to bring money in the front, right? Selling is the main activity of your business. And so when you put focus on selling, your business grows. I just can't stress this strongly enough, that what you put your attention on, your team will put your attention on. And when you put your attention on creating a service culture that sells, you will see sales growth. So think about it this way. If you can increase your average sale by 15%, I'm talking about, all of your sales. If you can increase your average sale by 15%, what that means is that you're going to grow your annual sales by 15% without getting any new customers. So often, independent retailers, independent florists spend so much time and money on getting new customers. They're not mining the diamonds in their own backyard. They're not doing what they can with the customers they already have. And selling, giving your team the skills they need to be successful and creating a culture that sells is the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. You know, I'm going to talk to you about the Retail Sales Academy in just a while. You don't need to use the Retail Sales Academy, but I'm going to suggest to you that when you engage in correct selling, skills training, and coaching, that you're going to see at least a 10% increase in your average ticket. I've seen 20 and 30% increases in the average ticket just by getting focused on giving your team the skills they need and the perspective they need to be successful salespeople. So let's start with one of the big things that needs to be understood when we talk about sales training, in that there is often this misconception. People think of selling as the stereotypic used car salespeople. And so the reason a lot of your people, on the floor salespeople, your people who are picking up the phone and talking to inquiries, a lot of the reason that you're not getting all of the money that you should and could, and therefore your customers aren't getting the experience that they should or could, is because you and the people you work with have a very narrow perception of what selling is. You've got the wrong perception. You think of selling as being manipulative. You think of selling, or your team thinks of pushy, manipulative, rude, close it down at all costs, get as much money as you can from somebody at all costs. And that is absolutely the wrong perspective. Let me say that again. That is not what selling is. Great selling is great customer service. Think about your own experience. So if Janet were to walk downtown Wheaton, Illinois, and walk into all of the stores, she would get an indifferent experience from a lot of those stores. She might get somebody who was rude and pushy, but the experience that is going to be memorable and the experience that is going to bring her back into that store again and again and again is the experience where a skilled person comes up, engages her, skillfully, gets into a conversation skillfully, asks good questions, shows the right merchandise, all of those things. So great selling is great customer service. And that's what this whole webinar is about. How do you create a culture where all of your team members understand how to sell? How do you create a culture where people skillfully sell, right? So let's get really, really clear about this. Selling is a skill. And if you don't give your people the skills they need to be successful, you can't expect them to be successful. So it's about education and training. It's about creating a culture. And when you think of culture, so here's a definition: the collective focus and actions of a group of people. So when you think of the French, what do you think of? Wine and baguettes, right? When you think of the French, and that there's this perception of what that people, or in this case, the French, are like. When you think of the Germans, you think of very organized and very precise. So there are these stereotypes that are generally backed up by some bit of truth, but that defines a culture. I happen to like this definition that comes from Seth Godin. People like us doing things this way. So your job is to create a culture where people focus on your customers, they skillfully sell, and they're always focused on the customers and skillfully selling with this heart of service. Now, what they're trying to do is give your customers the kind of experience that so that when your customers leave, they go, wow, that experience was perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. This was indeed a perfect purchase. And we'll get to that in a second. But when we talk about culture creation, have to understand that it works like this. You don't just throw somebody on the floor and expect them to be a salespeople. This is one of the big mistakes that gets made, and I see it being made all the time. I know that I made it. I had a retail business for 19 years. And this mistake is you just put people, because I'm an extrovert, and because I was naturally a good salesperson, I just expected everybody else would be. And it wasn't. They weren't. And it wasn't until I got serious about training, about culture creation, about building a system for selling, that the culture started to emerge, that service and selling driven culture started to coalesce. But it's not easy. It's not throw them on the floor and expect them to be great. It works like this, but it feels like that, right? It feels like a unicorn. And, but isn't that how most hard things are? You put in the work, you do the work, you grind, you do what needs to be done to get the result that you want. And then once it's happened, it feels easy. It feels great. And that's what culture creation is all about. So what does a culture start with? A culture starts with good chicken. So what do I mean by good chicken? Well, at the Negen family, we like to cook. And we were trying to teach our children about good food and how to cook and how to eat healthy and all those things. And the joke became, not the joke, but the saying became, what's the secret to good chicken? If you want to cook a beautiful chicken dish, if you want your chicken recipe to come out as best it can, what's the answer? Good chicken. You can't get good results from bad ingredients. The beginning of any good result is with good ingredients. And so the secret to having a great team is to start with good chicken. So when you are interviewing that next person, I want you to sit there and look at them and think about it and say, are these people good chicken? Because unless you have good potential, you're never going to turn them into that service-driven selling superstar that you want from every single person on your team. That whole idea of a culture. And if you look at your Gold Star game plan, if you download this, which I encourage you to do, you'll see that number 3 is letting go of some people. So when we talk about creating a culture, recognize this: one bad apple does indeed spoil the whole bunch. So when you make a commitment to creating a service culture that sells, recognize that you're probably going to have to let 1 or 2 or more people go. And those people are probably the people who have been with you the longest. But guess what? You let them go, and all of a sudden your culture gets a chance to breathe. When you let go of the people who are negative forces in your store, not only do the people who want to be good and want to succeed and want to come along with your vision for a great culture, they're going to step up, but then it also allows you to bring in new people who are going to buy into your vision. So just recognize this: good chicken implies you need people. If you have bad people, those people have to go so you can bring in new people, good people. So it starts with training. This is interesting because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. His name's Mark Weiss. He is the co-founder of Management One, an inventory buying service. The reason that I share that is he's been in retail. He's been working with independent retailers like you all his life. He's just sold his company, but for 40 or 50, for 50 years, he was, intimately involved with, that's not the right word. He was really involved with retailers like you. And Mark says, I quit using the word training. I'm starting to use the word education. Apparently the CEO of Costco says they train animals, you educate people. And I said, Mark, I think there's some truth to that. Yes, you want to think of it as education, but training is education with expectations attached to it. So you go to school, you don't have to remember it, you don't have to use it, you have to take the test. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to educate them, but then you're putting expectations on it because you know how you want your business to run. And there are 3 pillars to effective retail training. Number 1 is policies and procedures and operations. You need to teach your people how they function correctly when they are working in your business. And we're not going to spend a lot of time with this, but I just want to say to you that this is really, really important because you as a manager know that your time gets chipped away at by people asking questions that they don't know the answer to. How do I request time off? Where do I park? What's our policies? So you have to give them the framework. Now, this is an education. You have to educate them on how they behave in your business. And when they understand the rules, it gives them the freedom to serve your customers. If they don't understand the rules, there's always this inhibition around trying things, around doing things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is product training. And that includes flowers. That includes how do you talk to people? What happens when somebody comes in and they're interested in a quote for a wedding or a funeral or a special occasion. You know, what is the products? Can they talk to them about the flowers in the walk-in or in the reach-in? If you sell gifts, what are your best sellers? And number two on, or actually it's number one, is when we talk about product training here, you want to say to yourself, what are the top products? I mean, every salesperson doesn't need to know everything about everything you sell, but they do need to know about the most important things. They need to know features. They need to know benefits. They need to know how to sell it. They need to, understand how it all works. So product training is really, really important. And then finally, we have sales training. And remember, I shared this earlier. Sales, people need to be taught how to sell. Yes, some people are predisposed to being great salespeople, but no matter what, you have to give them the skills. Like I shared with you, I was a pretty natural salesperson, but I realized that I wasn't really that good. I closed a lot of people. It was good, but I realized that there was another level for my performance. And so what I did, our store, the Mackinac Kite Company, this is Michigan. Our store was at the northern end of the lower peninsula of Michigan. And I went to the town south of us, Sheboygan, Michigan. They had a bookstore. And I bought the only book they had on selling, the Lacey's Book of Sales Techniques. Now, at the time, it was just 2 employees, me and my brother. It was just 2 of us. And we didn't have a lot of people coming in. And so what we did was if there was a group of people in the store, only one group, one of us would go out on the floor and sell, and the other person would watch, right? So we had both read the book, and we were starting to think about how to sell differently. And then we would flip-flop. And so basically, we both coached each other for a whole year, a whole summer season. And by the end of that summer season, we were really, really good salespeople. We had built a system, the system that becomes the 6 steps to the perfect purchase, which you're going to learn about in just a moment. But because Steve and I had developed a system, and because we used it, and because we took the new people when they came in the store and trained them on it, we had indeed created a service culture that sells. My brother Steve and I were very, very focused on, on the customer and the customer experience. But being nice, kind, friendly, helpful people is not the same as being a skilled salesperson. So here's the thing to recognize is that product training and sales training are not the same thing, right? I didn't realize this until one year I was working a booth at a pet industry event. And it was right after we had launched the Retail Sales Academy. And, people would come into the booth and I would ask them, do you do sales training? And almost to a person, they said, yeah, we do sales training. Our reps come in and do sales training. And that's when it was like, oh, okay. They don't distinguish between product training and sales training. Product training is what you sell. Sales training is how you sell it. So yes, going back to what I shared with you earlier, yes, you want to teach your people the features and the benefits and the deeper benefits of your products, but you also need to train them, teach them how to sell. But now here's the next thing that's the really, really important. That training, the first distinction I needed to make was sales training and product training are different. The second key distinction for you here is that training is an event, it's a process. Too many people say, I'm going to do sales training. So you bring everybody in on a Sunday morning, or you bring them over to your house after work one day, and you do a sales training program. Takes an hour. Now you can check off your little box. I have trained my people how to sell. Guess what? They forget it. There's this thing called a forgetting curve, and the forgetting curve has been proven that people forget almost everything they learn within 90 days if it's not reinforced. So when you say, I want to create a service culture that sells, what that means is you have to do the sales training, and then you have to constantly reinforce what they've learned so they don't forget it. You have to constantly coach. You have to constantly work with them because there is enough money in this to make it worth your while. If you don't believe me, let's do a quick exercise. And Indy, can you put in chat a link to the sales calculator? So you're going to get in chat a sales calculator that will help you understand how much money you're leaving on the table. And when you're done with this, when you're done playing with this calculator, one of two things are going to happen. One is you're going to be mortified and horrified that you are actually missing that much in sales. I did this live with a group of music store owners and a guy who I came to know pretty well later on down the road. When we went through the calculator, he had multiple locations. I said, how much are you missing? And he was missing out on $5 million worth of sales. So, but let's just do this exercise real quickly here. So write down your average ticket. What is your average ticket? Let's take weddings and funerals and big jobs out of it. Just, walk-in traffic, on the phone traffic, not even web traffic, because that sale's already been made. You can't affect it in any way. So the sales that can be effective, walk-in and phone-in traffic. And then what's your average ticket there? And then let's ask, write down, what is the average ticket of your best salesperson? Whether that's you or somebody else. And it doesn't have to be precise, but that is those two numbers, just sort of spitball them. And if you wouldn't mind, if somebody wouldn't mind putting those two numbers in chat, that would be really appreciated, because I'm going to sort of make up a scenario here. But if I can get some real numbers from one or two of you, it becomes even more real. So what I know, I know several florists, and let's just say your average in-store sale is $50. I know it's a little low, and whether you sell gifts and things like that has a lot to do with it. But so if the average sale in your store is $50, I would feel comfortable saying that the average salesperson in your store is selling $60. So that is a difference of 20%, right? So now here's what I want to say to you is that if you have a difference of $10, we call that the gap. The gap is the dollar amount between your average and your highest. And these numbers aren't, this formula isn't perfect, I get it. But if the gap is $10, what that means is that every single time somebody other than your best salesperson is talking to your customers, it's costing you $10. And that's kind of a minimum. So just recognize that closing the gap and getting all of your salespeople as close as possible to the average ticket of your top salesperson is the lowest of all of the lowest hanging fruit in your business. So, Indy, did anybody get brave and share numbers?
I'm not seeing any numbers.
Okay.
Put 50 and 60 into the calculator if you want to finish that one.
What's that? Did you put it in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's do. We're gonna make up Bob's Flower Shop in Grand Haven, Michigan. So my average ticket. So Indy's playing with the calculator here. My average ticket is 50. The average of my best salesperson is 60. The next question is how many transactions a day? Let's just say I'm open from 10 to 6. And so I do 4 transactions, let's say 25 transactions a day. I'm not a super busy store. I have 1 store and I'm open 7 days a week. All right, so do you see? So Bob, so here's the scenario again. My store, average sale 50, best salesperson 60. I do 25 transactions a day. I have 1 store that's open 7 days a week. Let's roll the numbers, Indy. How much am I missing? I am missing $91,000 in sales in my fairly small store. So get that calculator, play with it, and it will definitely point out what a great opportunity you have in front of you. So, but you have to make a commitment to this culture. So now let's talk about the selling system that I'm talking about. So I'm going to go back to my experience at the Mackinac Kite Company. I owned that business for 19 years. I started it. I sold to my brother in 1999. He still runs it successfully with my sister-in-law. But what we realized was that we took several retail sales training programs, but it just seemed to us that all of the programs that we were taking were very, very kind of mercenary, kind of like the used car salesperson. You know, they taught the behind the back triple close. You know, it made us feel dirty. So, and we were incredibly customer focused, like I hope you are. And so what we decided to do was to create a customer focus, a customer friendly sales process. Because here's what I believe: when you focus on the customer, good things happen. I believe that when you love your customers, the money will follow. So we created this process and we call it the perfect purchase. You see, most sales training processes and most salespeople focus on the benefit to the business. Businesses sell, people purchase. And when you focus on the purchase and making sure that whatever your customer purchases is perfect, what you're going to get is you're going to get loyalty. People are going to come back to you again and again. They're going to know you, like you, trust you, and that equals dollars, right? So although I'm preaching love your customers, the money will follow, I'm looking at you and saying the money will follow. The money will absolutely follow. You will be rewarded with more dollars. So there's 4 moments of truth, I call them, in a perfect purchase. So what are these moments and how do you recognize if a purchase is indeed perfect? So first of all, when they walk up to the counter. So I walk into the walk-in, I pick up some flowers, I bring them to the counter. If I'm still feeling really good about my purchase, that is milestone number 1, when they are at the counter. And then when I get home, so I walk in the door, I said, Susan, I bought some flowers for us. She said, oh, they're beautiful. She's happy with them. I'm happy that she's happy with them. Everybody's happy. So that's the second milestone. The third milestone, in your case, wouldn't be a few months down the road, but I mean, do your flowers hold up? As an independent florist, your flowers should last longer and look better longer than if I buy my flowers at the grocery store. So, if a week from when I come home or whatever the time frame is, the flowers still look good, that is a perfect purchase. But then where it really hits the road is when your customers need to buy flowers again. Was the experience good enough? Was the whole experience perfect enough that I say, wow, I really like that florist down on Washington Avenue. Rather than saying, oh, I'll pick up some flowers at the grocery store, I'll go out of my way to buy it from Grand Haven Floral. Does that make sense? So it's not just about getting the money, it's about making sure that your customers are happy with their purchase. So let's talk about it. What are the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. The first step, and we're going to go through this real quickly, right? This isn't a sales training webinar. This is a culture creation webinar. Understanding the selling process is only part of the process of creating a service culture that sells. Number one is establishing and greeting and establishing a relationship. And we're going to use the in-store example here, not on the phone. Again, a web order has been done, right? That's done. All you have to do is fulfill it. But let's just use the example of an in-store. So greeting and establishing a relationship. You all know the answer here, but what are the worst words in retail selling? Can I help you? Why are they the worst words in retail selling? Because the automatic answer is no, I'm just looking. So what you want to do is you want to greet and establish a relationship right away so that people feel comfortable. So the first thing that you say is warm words of welcome, not can I help you, but hey, good afternoon, right? Nice to see you today. Something that doesn't have a yes, no answer. Something that isn't about the fact that they're in your store to buy flowers. And then the next piece of it is what we call comment or compliment. Comment, what can everybody talk about? The weather. It's a lovely, lovely day. What can they compliment? You can always look at somebody and find something nice to say. If they're with a child, you could say, oh, isn't that a beautiful baby? You know, if they're with a pet, oh, isn't that a good boy or a good girl? But the purpose of step one is not to start selling. The purpose of step one is to warm up the relationship. Now, here's the deal. The deal is you have to get skilled salespeople. Good, kind, nice, friendly, helpful people are great, but they're going to make classic mistakes that are going to cost you money. They're going to do things like say, can I help you? Or if they're not confident in their selling skills, they're going to be Roombas. You know, Roomba's a robotic vacuum sweeper. You know, they're docked. Then they go out at a predetermined time. They do their deal and they come back and then they get back in the dock. And so my friend Louis Bodenheimer calls them Roomba employees. They stand behind the counter when a customer comes in, they come out from behind the counter, they say, can I help you? The customer says, no, I'm just looking. They go back again and they dock themselves behind the counter again. So you want no Roomba salespeople. You want them to understand how to skillfully get into a conversation. The second step then is questioning and listening. The first part of that questioning and listening stage is what we call a key question. And the key question is called that because it unlocks what they're really there for. So for instance, when I was in the kite business, I would say, are you looking for a kite for yourself or are you looking for a gift, right? That question opened up to more answers. If they said, I'm looking for a kite for myself, well, that's awesome. Let's talk about you. I'm looking for a kite for a gift. That's awesome. Let's talk about who you're giving a gift to. So if somebody walks into your walk-in cooler and they're looking for flowers, what is a question you could ask? You could say, what is the occasion? And they say, oh, it's nothing. I just want to bring home some flowers. Great, you know more. If they say, oh, a friend of mine is having a special occasion, great, you know more. Or if you say, oh, this has happened, great, you know more. So the key question gets you into a conversation. But then this is where the real skill comes in, because the real skill comes from asking lots and lots of really, really good questions. So let's just say it's a special occasion. I want to buy some flowers for a special occasion. Great. Is it you in a special occasion? No, it's not. My sister is my sister is in a show and I want to give her flowers because it's the first time she's been in a live play. Great. You start saying things like, oh, that's so cool. What show is she in? You know, what role is she in? How much do you want to spend? All of these questions get you where you want to go. So think of it this way. Somebody comes in and this is what I don't know, right? My arms are extended in that are probably extended outside of the frame. I'm always guilty of this. But every time you ask a good question and they give you an answer, you know more and more and more and more and more, right? So you go from not knowing why they're in your store to knowing exactly why they're in your store. And now you can start to serve them better, right? So you've asked all the good questions. Then you start to show them the merchandise. Going back to the example, oh, you know, in theater, roses are the tradition. So let's take a look at these roses. What color would you like? Keep doing these things. Show and tell is where you make the merchandise come alive. This is where, if you sell gifts, where you have them touch the fabric. This is where you, when I was in the toy business, this is where I would teach them the games. Once you understand what they're doing in your store, then you have earned the right to make suggestions about the merchandise that would be perfect for that purchase. Now, something else, this fifth step, which is called adding on, happens all throughout the entire process. But so, you know, let's go back to the example of I'm buying flowers for my sister. I want to give them to her on stage, opening night of her new show. She really stepped out of her comfort zone by auditioning for this show. Then you could say things like, well, what would you add on? You think about it. Maybe you add on certainly a card you would add on. Maybe you could add on some flowers for you to bring home. You could bring home some flowers for you to have. So you're always thinking about what else they want. And in the example of the flowers for the show, there's not a lot of add-ons, but think about adding on. Just recognize that there's always an opportunity to add on. You're always thinking ahead for them. And then the next one here is closing the sale. You know, think about this metaphor that I use, that you're asking questions, you're asking questions, you're asking questions. You show them the right merchandise, you show them all the appropriate add-ons. But if you don't ask for the sale, and this starts to become particularly true when you're selling weddings, when you're selling funerals, when you're selling special events. At the end of the day, you ask all the questions, you get all the information, you show them all the options, you get to the place where they are comfortable. When they know that it's a perfect purchase, you know that they know it's a perfect purchase, they know that you know it's a perfect purchase, then you just have to close the sale. You have to step up and say, great, this is exactly what you're looking for. How would you like to pay for it? What would you do to, you know? So you always have to close the sale. Remember this, if you're taking notes, write this down. If they don't make a perfect purchase, it's not a perfect purchase. So, and then finally, you want to say, thank you. Have a nice day is not thank you. There needs to be that ending that is appropriate. And let's just talk about this real quickly here too. My views have changed on this a little bit, because what I have found from working with, you know, tens of thousands of independent retailers like you is that moment at the counter or that moment on the phone is the perfect opportunity to do more, to set the stage for the next transaction. So if you have a loyalty program, it needs to be a non-negotiable standard that every customer is either, you know, that their journey towards their next redemption is mentioned, If they're not a member of the loyalty program, it's a non-negotiable standard that they're invited to be, to join the loyalty program. Here is another opportunity to add on candies, lotions, potions, notions. So, impulse items at the counter. So that sixth step is so much more than thank you. That sixth step is thank you plus all of the things that you do to take it to the next level, to get them back into the store again. So that is the 6 steps to a perfect purchase. When you and your team use these 6 steps correctly, when you train your people how to sell like this, all of a sudden, your people, your customers are going to know you, they're going to like you, they're going to trust you. So the question to ask yourself is, if you want that local business, we're coming up on Mother's Day right now. This is a perfect opportunity for you to train your team now so that your people understand how to sell during the rush of Mother's Day. But the other nice thing that I want to say to you all the time, I remember I was speaking at an FTD event, by the way, and somebody raised their hand. We were taking questions, and somebody said to me, I'm already busy enough on Valentine's Day. I'm already busy enough on Mother's Day. I want to know how to build my business for the rest of the year. And what I said to them, and I'm saying to you right now, is the best way to build your business for the rest of the year is to take that once a year traffic or twice a year traffic, get their contact information, get them to join your loyalty program, and then market to them the rest of the year. Take that Mother's Day traffic, get their contact information, get them in your loyalty program, and then market to them the rest of the year. There's 3 ways to grow your business: get new customers, increase the average sale, which is what we're talking about right here, and get more transactions per customer. So if you and your team skillfully sell, you engage in the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. In that 6th step, part of that 6th step is getting people to sign up for your loyalty program, to get their contact information. This is how you take that 2 transaction, that Valentine's and Mother's Day customer, and turn them into Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and 1 or 2 more transactions per year. Let's look at the math real quick. So if your average customer shops with you twice a year, and you can get your average customer to shop with you 3 times a year, you have, assuming that the average ticket remains the same and you don't lose customer, the same number of customers, you've built your business 50% just by getting your current customers in more often. So, this is just so important. It's just so important for you as independent retailers. So when we talk about this whole idea of how do you get to a perfect purchase, this should be your mantra. The more you know, the better you serve. The better you serve, the more you'll sell. Selling is service. Selling is the process of uncovering their wants and their needs. Selling is the process of getting them exactly what they want. A culture is the process of teaching everyone how to sell, coaching them constantly, keeping them moving forward, always staying focused on the selling in the store. So again, it looks like this. I mean, it works like this, but it feels like that. So what is your action plan? Let's go to that real quickly. So number 1, if you just do these 4 things, you're going to see a 10 or 15% increase in your average ticket. I'm just looking at you and telling you the truth. Seen it happen again and again and again. So product training. Don't say I need to train everybody on everything. Say, okay, what are my most popular items? Floral, gift, whatever you sell. Say, what do my team members need to know about my most popular products? Train them on features and benefit. Sales training. We're going to talk about the Retail Sales Academy in just a second. You now have learned the bare bones of the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. You can go and take what you've heard here today and flesh it out for your business and train your people. You can create your own selling system, but you have to have a selling system that you can train. So the second part of the process is to do sales training, right? Let's go back to this fact. People selling is a skill, and people need to be taught the skills. They need to be educated. They need to be trained. There needs to be expectations put on it. Then you need to start letting go of people. So I'm going to look at all of you and ask you this rhetorical question. If you could grow your average ticket, therefore your sales, by 15% in the next 60 days, would you do it? And you'll go, well, yeah, of course I'd do it. Well, here's what's going to happen. Let's just say you make that commitment. You say, wait a second, what Bob is saying makes sense. You get together, you pull up that retail sales calculator, you're playing with it, and you go, oh my gosh, I'm missing out on tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales. This is where I should put my focus. When you make that commitment, when you make that choice to create a service culture that sells, you are going to find people who resist. And then those people who resist have to go away and they have to be replaced, which is why that is part of your Gold Star game plan. If you're going to create a culture, you can't have a culture where 2/3 of the people are on board and 1/3 of the people are fighting against what you're doing. So I'm looking at you and saying, look, there's so much money here, but you have to step up and say, okay, I'm going to make this happen. Does that make sense? So letting people go is a big part of this process. And then finally, you want to engage in constant and coaching and training, meaning you can't remember selling is it's not an event, it's a process. So our best clients are doing short weekly trading sessions. They're coaching individually. If I'm going to tell you about the Retail Sales Academy in just a moment, but there's continuous coaching built in. But again, let's remember that forgetting curve. And if you don't reinforce the training that you've given, the education that you've given, they're going to forget just about all of it in 90 days. If you don't make a commitment to it and drive it home, especially in the beginning, it's going to go away. And the time that you spent will be time poorly spent. So that is your Gold Star game plan, 15, 20%. I'm asking you, is it worth it? And I hope that you're saying yes, because I can tell you it'll feel like a sparkly unicorn, a rainbow unicorn. But let's just leave with this. Let's leave with love your customers, the money will follow. You know, you as a local independent retailer, your ability to serve your customers well, your ability to create the kind of experience that is memorable, your ability to give someone that special something that a florist, that only an independent florist can give them. This is your competitive advantage. Don't forget it. Your customers are the lifeblood of your business. Love your customers and the money will follow. So if you agree with what I'm sharing with you here, I'm going to encourage you to go to the retailsalesacademy.com. On your handout, there's a little piece on what the Retail Sales Academy is. But the Retail Sales Academy is an online sales training platform where I teach your people how to sell. There is built-in accountability. When your people take the quizzes, take the lessons, they have to pass quizzes. So just imagine this. Imagine letting me do all of the sales training for you. By the way, I'm very good at it. And all you really have to do to manage the process is keep an eye on the reports. So for less than a half hour every week, all you have to do is go into the back end and look at the reports and say, Indy's not doing her training, Janet is. Good job, Janet. Indy, da, da, da. You know, Billy's doing it, Jimmy's not. And so I can do the training. All you have to do is follow up and make sure they're actually doing the work. Another beautiful thing about the Retail Sales Academy is that every week another lesson comes out. They're typically less than 10 minutes long, but remember, continuous coaching, continuous training. So if you want to go into the sales calculator, see how much you're missing, then go to Retail Sales Academy, figure out how much it would cost to have all of your people on the Retail Sales Academy. And I know for a fact that you're going to look at it and go, huh, this is one of the best investments I can ever make in my business. So anyway, just wanted to say that because it would be inappropriate for me to say, hey, do all this stuff and not giving you a resource to make it simple for you to do. So having said that, Q&A. Indy, Janet, questions?
Thanks, Bob. That was a lot of great information. Yes. Quick reminder for everybody, Bob's Gold Star game plan is available right there in the handout section for you to download in the toolbar. It will also be available on ftdi.com later with the recording as well if you don't grab it now. And then, yeah, simply type any questions that you have in that question box and we will be sure to ask Bob. We do have one. What you were talking about was all like in-store and things like that, but
Yep.
How does that relate to phone sales? Or do you have any tips that people can take?
Absolutely. So the same thing happens with phone sales, right? So here's the difference, and it's particularly relevant in your industry, is there's a difference between an order taker and a salesperson. So somebody calls on the phone, you ask the exact same questions, you know, so really all it is you don't have the opportunity to look somebody in the eye and see body language, but you do the same, you know, you would go through basically the same process. If they just call and say, hey, I'd like to order some flowers, don't just say, okay, I'm ready when you are. Say, oh, that's absolutely fantastic. So who is this for? Is this for you or is this for someone else? Well, it's for someone else. So you just engage in the whole process. And then when you get done, you know, when they end up ordering the main thing, whoever that's for, then you start adding on. You start asking, you know, well, do you have flowers in your house today? Or would you like a card with that? We have candies that we can deliver with that. I laughed one day. I made a phone purchase from Williams Sonoma. This was a while ago. And I just laughed because they just kept adding on. I said, no, thanks. And then they would say, well, do you know about this? I was like, okay, uncle. They were super cool about it. They were super friendly. But at the end of the day, they had a script, meaning they were trained. But at the end of the day, don't assume because somebody only calls to buy a dozen roses that for someone else, that doesn't mean that they don't want or need flowers in their home, that there's not a card that's appropriate for it, that if you have a subscription service, that you don't want to introduce a subscription service. So, you know, it's a great question, Janet. Thank you for asking that, because the 6 steps to the perfect purchase applies perfectly to phone sales. The only thing is you don't have the opportunity to, you know, to show the merchandise in person. So great question, whoever asked that. Thank you.
All right. Apparently you explained everything very well, Bob, because there are
Yeah.
no other questions. Everybody is full of all the knowledge and they're excited to get rolling. So thank you so much for joining us last month
Great.
and this
Can
month.
I just have one last something to say to everybody who's watching this? And I think this is
Absolutely.
really important. So you have Mother's Day coming up. So you have time to train your people. Sales training, fundamental, the basics of sales training. Again, whether you do it yourself or whether you use the Retail Sales Academy, you can get your people trained. That basic, we call it professional certification, that first, sort of fundamentals. It's like your first 5 golf lessons, right? You're not going to be a fool out there. You know what you're doing. You can get that done before Mother's Day. And getting it done before Mother's Day is going to result in more sales for you, happier customers, which will result in more sales down the road. So I hope if you're watching this, you don't say, oh, that's interesting. Education without action is entertainment. So you do have time before Mother's Day. I'm encouraging you to use that time and you're going to see the results from it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob, so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Excuse me, the recording will be available on demand on the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel. And as a reminder, today's webinar was part 2 of a 2-part series. So if you missed part 1, which is the customer experience, climbing the customer service pyramid, you can find that recording on the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel as well. And then for more education programming from FTD, please visit ftdi.com and register for those upcoming free webinars and virtual design shows, as well as viewing all of the past education programs on demand. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.